Tonight, I'm going to be giving the Icebreaker speech. I'd like to start with a question. Should art be made for public consumption or for private consumption? Hello, my name is Tamara, and today I'm going to be talking about this question and the role that being an artist has played in my life. But before I encounter the question, let me start by explaining my name. Hello, Toastmasters. I realize that my name is a little bit cryptic itself, kind of like cryptocurrency, perhaps. My last name is Italian. The Italian part of my family came to Boston, and my first name is Armenian or Russian, but I'm not Armenian or Russian. The story behind my first name is the fact that my grandfather was in the Coast Guard in World War II, and he ended up in New London after the war, with the Coast Guard Academy being in New London, along with a lot of Coast Guard facilities. And they have electric boat across the river in New London. And, you know, electric boat, they make all sorts of submarines and things. So I think it was kind of like my parents and grandparents' joke, or perhaps their concern, given that they were from the Cold War era, to give their child this name. But let me return to the problem of art. I think from the time I was a young child, my parents knew that I was going to have this art sort of life. Like in elementary school, we moved a couple of times, and it seemed like I always ended up with a homeroom teacher or the language arts teacher who gave tons of like illustration or bookmaking activity assignments. And then in middle school, I was sort of apprenticed to this Korean American children's book illustrator who was one of the middle school teachers, and we like hung out and she taught, and I learned about illustration. And then it was interesting in middle school because I also ended up starting martial arts with Korean martial arts, and I continued that up until maybe my 30s. And I also did Aikido for many years. And I actually taught English in South Korea for about 10 years. So being an artist in this milieu of kind of psychological and sociological development was really kind of fascinating, given the fact that this had sort of been progressing since middle school. Unfortunately, my mom got MS, multiple sclerosis, when I was in high school. So I think that impacted my social development in certain ways. And you know, back then we didn't have all of the gene testing that we do now. So it was more of a decision whether to have children or not, or with who. But perhaps I'm digressing from the problem of art. Yeah, you know, when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with my great aunts up in Boston. They lived in the same house since when they came over on the boat from Italy. And this house was full of all kinds of amazing junk. Like, they say that you should clean out your house when you get old, but honestly, if you have cool stuff in your house, don't do it. Because I lived in their house for like a couple of years. And I think I learned more about design from just hanging out in their house than I did in all my art history classes, honestly. You know, they had stuff from the 60s or the 70s, or like this old vacuum cleaner that was like 50 years old. It was just fantastic because you realize that, you know, design changes so quickly and so much over time. But there's really things from the past that are quite interesting. So I guess perhaps I should speak briefly about where my work is. It's complicated because, when you cross between cultures, your social role sort of changes sort of in rather significant ways. I mean, I was in Korea when Donald Trump was president, and I don't know exactly what I would have thought if I was here, because I was living in a mono-ethnic country at the time. And so here, I don't know if you'll be able to see some of this stuff, but I was painting like you know, scenes of people with berry heads and bananas lying on the ground. This is all, like mini patio furniture, because we are learning about CRISPR now and gene editing, and we can make glow in the dark cats. So it's kind of like, where do we go from here? Like, it's very interesting. I let me see if we can see this one. I don't know exactly how I managed to paint this one. Anyway, so that is my story. I hope that you have learned something or found something interesting in my talk. I want to leave you with kind of a similar question to the one that I started with. If we're going to think about what is public and private art, then in terms of the places that we see art, like museums or people's houses, what kind of art do we want to see there? And, how are we going to value it? Because one of the choices you have as an artist is, do I get a day job or do I work at a design company? So anyway, I think I'll end there. Thank you very much for listening.